Hey associates! So this video is just going to go over some of those really the most common errors in writing that create the most confusion for readers, just to be aware of, and just keeping these few things, word choices, the really common punctuation mistakes in mind, so that way you can be a more effective writer in emails, even like text messages, and then of course throughout the semester on your assignment. So these are those common things I'm going to be looking for. All right, switch a little bit. So first we're going to start on the micro level. So anytime we're talking about micro level writing or editing, that's really that sentence kind of level. It's those kind of specific things, as opposed to the macro level, which is more about editing for the whole document and the content and organization. So the common errors when it comes to the micro level are going to be punctuation, right? Punctuation being your periods, semicolons, colons, commas, all of those. They have very specific functions and purposes. Definitely visit that grammar cheat sheet handout that's on Canvas for more extensive definitions and examples. But each one has very specific functions that it serves, and so if you're misusing them, it's going to introduce some more confusion and reduce the clarity of your writing for the reader. Same with word choice and placement. So same, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, they all have very specific functions and meanings. And so if you're misusing them, then the reader's kind of going to be like, what? A little bit confused. They may not know exactly why the sentence isn't working or why it's confusing, because a lot of these writing and grammar and word choice rules, we just sort of, if you grew up with English as your first language in particular, you just sort of learned it, like we just know it, it's kind of a subconscious thing, and often we don't know the reasons exactly why we do some of the syntax and things that we do. If you are learning English as maybe your second or third language, then you might be a little bit more aware of what each thing does, but just kind of keep that in mind. And so when I'm looking at and grading your work, I'm really going to be focused on, what will your coworkers notice? Like, what are the big glaring things? Obviously, I've gone through classes and been trained in some of the more, I don't know, specific editing and writing issues, but I'm not going to hold you as much to that, as long as it's like, okay, well, it's the general public, what's your boss, what's your coworkers, what are they going to notice? Those are going to be the common mistakes that I will definitely correct and really point out to you in grading. Same if it's hurting the reader's ability. So on the face. When it comes to periods and commas, right, those are definitely two that get frequently misused. Periods less so, right? You pretty much all know when to use a period and tended to put that in the correct spot, right? Complete sentence, that independent clause, it's the end of the thing, period. However, commas often get kind of misused, and again, they have very specific functions, right? This comma now turns this into, oh, okay, here's, the clause at the end, so we know you're talking, to grandma, saying let's eat, as opposed to just let's eat grandma, right? So periods, full stop, end of the sentence, right? So in the most basic sense, you need to have a complete thought, right? And a complete thought is marked by a subject and a predicate. So I am the subject. What do I have or do or think or say? Well, I have a dog. That's a predicate. Together, they make a complete thought. Right? Subject, the dog. Well, really a subject is sort of the name, but the dog's name, first part. What about the dog's name? Is Gatsby, verb, predicate, complete thought. Commas, on the other hand, separate introductory clauses, right? Let's see. Phrases, words, dependent clauses, like all sorts of things. Again, look at that handout if you want more examples, and definitely you can check out some of the other resources on Canvas, but there's no commas, have a lot of different functions, but the most common ones that you'll probably be writing are for like clauses and connecting things like words. So a common thing, we call it a comma fault, sometimes called a splice. Thankfully there's a little bit different, but you can just group them together. And that's really, you get that error when a comma is separating, you know, main clauses, but they don't have any like what we call coordinating conjunction. So that's going to be your and, for, nor, or, but, yet, so. So you're just kind of like rolling on through with two independent clauses like smushed together. And it's really, that becomes an issue for your readers because it turns into also what you might call like a run-on sentence, where periods, right, tell the reader, okay, this is the end of the thought. And then subconsciously as we're reading, our brain goes, okay, cool, end of thought, categorize, move on. But since we're trained to look for the periods to know when that thought is ending, if you just use commas too much, then the reader's continuously like looking for like, where is the end of the thought, right? However, keep in mind, just because you have an and or an or in there doesn't mean you actually need a comma, so just kind of pay attention to those. So as an example, right, Gatsby likes to play with his Leo the lion and his tennis ball, right? This, we don't need a comma because this isn't a complete thought at the end, right? This is actually just listing the two things that Gatsby likes to play with. So this is kind of the most common time we see commas embedded where they just don't need to be, and it creates, you know, this weird pause. I mean, that's one way we think about commas. They're a little more sophisticated than that, but it creates a sort of pause, if you will. And then as a reader, I'm waiting for like, okay, so this is, okay, one sentence, he likes to play with his Leo the lion, and what is the next complete sentence going to be? But then it never comes, and so that's where the confusion comes into play. And one of those common rules that we probably learned when we were learning how to read and write is if you need to take a breath, place a comma. Sure, that you can get away with that, but just make sure to double check that you actually need the comma there because, again, non-functional commas just create more confusion for readers. Okay, semicolons versus colons. This one is the semicolon. This one is the colon. Again, particular functions, check the handout. But basically, semicolons are considered like a half stop, and the big thing with semicolons is it tells the reader that these two complete ideas are really closely related and they build on each other for context, right? So they are independent clauses and can stand by themselves, but they're missing some context and clarity. Like they really, you need to read them both together to understand the whole kind of picture. And so that's where you want to use that. So basically think, do my sentences, are they so closely connected with the idea that really it doesn't fully make sense if you only read one of them? If that's the case, then put a semicolon instead of a period in its place. Sometimes semicolons are used for lists with a lot of internal, like commas already, internal punctuations where it's kind of confusing, right? So there are two ways to write. So with a pen or pencil, and then some information about writing with a pen or pencil, semicolon, because now I'm going to the second way to write. So if we just had commas, it would just be a really long, confusing list. So that's why you want to separate it. Colons, on the other hand, they often are used to like introduce something and show emphasis, and they don't have as much of like the rigid kind of rules as semicolons do. So it can introduce like an incomplete, just like a phrase or a word even, whereas a semicolon makes sure that you have complete sentences. You also just want to avoid using a colon after a verb, right? Because this is just a sentence. Like you don't need to pause and emphasize these things necessarily. So that one can just be written out as a list. You know what I mean? Yeah, here's just a few other examples. So just gonna keep that in mind. I encourage you to, test out and play some of these advanced mechanics, and I will definitely mark it and let you know how it's going and give you some pointers and mark when you use them correctly, mark when they're creating an issue or not. All right, so the next really big thing to pay attention to is just knowing the meaning of these words. So these each have very specific meanings, and they are not as interchangeable as we tend to assume sometimes as writers, right? So for introduces an effect and then the cause. It's largely been replaced with because. We don't hear for a lot. So it'd be like, An example would be, I failed the test for I did not study, right? What's the effect? Failed the test. The cause, I did not study. On the other hand, if you use so, it would be, which is cause and then effect, it would be, I did not study, so I failed the test, right? So just make sure that you are using those appropriately, and adds information, or offers a choice, nor removes alternatives. So again, if you're saying, hey, you can choose between this or that, it's implying to the reader that they get to pick one. But if you say it cannot be this nor that, then you're telling the reader it's neither of those things, but it could be all the other stuff, right? But is contrast and unexpected, and then but and yet or similar. Yet is really that like stronger contrast. So for example, on how this plays out in application, if I say I drove to the store and I stopped at the park to enjoy the sunshine, right? And is adding information. So as a reader, you know that, I went to the store and I also, stopped at the park, right? I did two things on my trip out. There for sure, I did those. On the other hand, if I say I drove to the store, but, which is offering a contrast or something unexpected, I stopped at the park to enjoy the sunshine, well, now it's more ambiguous, right? We know that I stopped at the park, for sure, but it's left hanging if I ever actually made it to the store or not, right? And so that's the difference between adding information or, adding a contrast. And if I said I drove to the store, so I stopped at the park, then that would imply that driving to the store was the cause, and because I went to the store, I stopped at the park, right? So just kind of keep in mind what word choice you're using. Is it expressing the information that you actually want it to? Because as writers and technical writers especially, we just need to be really clear. We aren't going to be there often to explain, right, what we mean to the reader. All they have are the words on the page. So just make sure that you're choosing the words on the page carefully. Okay, so at the macro level, this is again the larger document kind of level, also paragraph level. You basically want to make sure you're presenting information clearly with a topic sentence. For every paragraph, just make sure you have that topic sentence in there so the reader of your technical writing, they know what this paragraph is going to be. So for example, my topic sentence could be something like, I love my dog for 2 reasons, his cute body and weird behavior. Okay, as a reader, when I get to that sentence, I know I'm about to read a paragraph all about this dog's body and his weird behavior. Like that's what I'm expecting. Right? That's the topic sentence. So all my information should support that topic sentence. So I could go on then in a few more sentences to explain, okay, well, his stumpy crooked legs support a 13-pound hot dog body, right? So that directly is explaining his cute body. So now as a reader, I'm like, oh, okay, yes, cute body, got it. Despite his length, he can curl that hot dog body into a tiny ball to sleep. It's kind of a weird thing, right? It's cute and it's weird. At random, he will wake up from naps to sprint across the house, out the dog door, and back to his kennel without reason, right? That's definitely a super weird thing. And then, my weird little dog steals my heart daily. So this is rephrasing what the topic sentence was. So in case the reader got lost or confused, right, try to restate at the end of your paragraph and ideas what that big picture that you were trying to explain and support was, right? I love my dog, steals my heart. The reasons, it's weird and cute little, kind of same thing. And then you can go into your next paragraph, right? So I'm going to transition. So even though it makes me laugh, kind of building off the weird little things that he does, he tests my patience on occasion, which then, right, we would assume that the next paragraph is going to explain how he can be annoying sometimes, right? So when it comes to document design, we're almost done. Think about the inverted pyramid, right? So in this case, you want to start off with this sort of purpose, action, right? So if you're writing an email or a memo or, even in a technical report, right? People are reading your technical writing for a specific reason, to find information, right? This isn't just for fun reading, right? This isn't creative, and you don't get the luxury to just sort of wander and share. Like, no, people are coming to your technical communication writing for a reason. So start off with the purpose, the action, and then move to that any requested information, the big picture items that they're going to be looking for, and then the other details as people's, attention and patience starts to fade. So make sure in these kind of two, where we still are hanging with you, you get that information that you really need to know. Additionally, make sure that you know your audience, their expertise, right? Change your language and jargon accordingly, levels of detail, other elements. Maybe they need more graphics, maybe they need less, depending on how well you know them and the audience. Also, even things like if this document is going to be printed out, that's going to impact the colors and amount of graphics that you choose, because obviously that's going to cost more money when printing. So it's really just for all your technical document design elements and that macro level, be thinking about those qualities. And then one of the last things, I just really encourage you to download Grammarly. Here's the link for it. It's available Chrome, Canvas, LinkedIn, Google Docs. Like it's just an extension, and it reads it for you, so that way it will tell you, oh, hey, this is a common mistake, and it also will explain why, which is really, really helpful. And you can also connect it to your Word and get it for Microsoft, and I think Mac. I'm not 100% sure on that, but definitely I really, really like this site and extension, and it just helps with that proofreading and explains kind of why some of those things are issues. So that's just a few micro, macro common errors in writing to look out for this semester. Bye.